I am not morally opposed to the death penalty, any more than I was a conscientious objector as a kid when I was in service. I'm not a conscientious objector. That doesn't mean I favor every war. And I'm not morally opposed to the death penalty, but the death penalty is unfairly applied, and I don't want to be a part of that.
If we as a society are going to speak up and say, hey, this is what we're going to stand tall for justice, and we're going to stand tall for this, then we have to really rethink and re-examine how we are dispensing that sense of justice.
Well, I've heard the phrase that we're very judicious with our death penalty in the state, and we save it for the worst of the worst. And I always found that a curious statement to make, because first of all, what that tells me is that the person making that statement hasn't read the statute.
My wife's was a high school principal. Is her life better or worse than mine? And you look at these folks around the country that lose their lives, that aren't policemen, that aren't law enforcement, but still have a value to society. Is their value any more than mine or any less?
To the person who has suffered the loss, every single murder is the worst of the worst. And the life of every single person is valuable. I believe that. I believe that. None of us are more valuable or less valuable than any other person. And so this hierarchy of value, I find offensive, and I know that murder victim family members find very, very painful.
It's a jury which, when asked questions in what's called the voir dire, is asked whether or not they have a moral opposition to the death penalty that would prevent them from voting for the death penalty. And if you indicate that you have an objection, conscientious objection to it, any objection, then you're not permitted on that jury. So everyone on the jury has to be able to vote for the death penalty. Of course, that disqualifies, I don't know how many percentage of people in New Hampshire, but a very large slice of people.
So when we do that, I think that we expose ourselves to a jury system that's very, very, very much imperfect.
There were two capital murder cases going on at the same time. There was Brooks and Addison. Addison was the fellow who murdered a police officer in Manchester. Brooks was a fellow who basically hired someone to murder someone who owed him just a little bit of money. Addison was a undereducated, poor black kid from Massachusetts, and Brooks was a wealthy homeowner and business owner. Two trials, both found guilty of capital murder, but during the penalty phase, the two juries came up with different points of view. Addison got death penalty, and Brooks got life without possibility of parole.
And you cannot make the argument that you're treating people similarly situated in similar ways. You're not. You're picking one person out of the haystack and saying, I appoint you as the person who's going to suffer this penalty. That is not the way that you can have a system that is respected by the broad base of the citizens in your state. And a criminal justice system has got to be respected by the broad base of citizens in the state.